country needs change, and I believe the person to make that change is Nigel Farage. And I believe he'll be the next Prime Minister of this country.
You do believe that? So Farage in number 10 by 2029?
I wouldn't be doing this, but I 100% believe that he was going to be the next Prime Minister.
Is Reform now the party of millionaires and billionaires, Mr Farage?
No, we haven't sold a single peerage yet, have we? Extraordinary. No, look, I mean, what's wrong with successful people who've got time on their hands to get involved and help us raise money?
Well, that was Nigel Farage with Nick Candy. Our Nick is here. Nick, talk us through it then. Is Nigel Farage the man with the momentum right now?
Well, Katie, you were asking earlier, are the other party leaders nervous about Nigel Farage? And I'd say they're not exactly panic-stricken, but I would say they are looking at Reform UK with great care. Only last week we were reporting about how Reform UK is in joint second place in Wales, and there's a Senate election there in 2026, crucially fought on proportional representation. They're doing well in national opinion polls. But what about actual votes in actual ballot box? So why don't we take a look at some figures that have been compiled by Ben Walker for Britain Elects. And now this is council by-elections across GB since the general election. If we look at the Conservatives, down by 0.3 points. Labour, wait for this, down by 9.8%. The Liberal Democrats up by 1.2. The Greens down by 1.8. Drum roll, what's Alex going to say? Reform UK up by 11 points. Now, I'm going to have a word of caution. Reform UK and UKIP have not had a massive presence historically in local government. To get on that list, you had to have previously stood in the election held in that seat. And the second thing is you would expect a governing party to fall back in council by-elections after a general election. But that 9.8 fall by Labour is much, much lower, higher, whatever fall than you've had in recent years. Now, there are some nerves within the Labour Party. I was talking to one Starmer loyalist, and they were saying they were impressed stroke alarmed with the way that Reform UK had immediately exploited the means testing of winter fuel, saying they thought that was rather impressive but also rather worrying. And one cabinet minister, they said to me, there's a general state of pissed offness. People are not happy. This has just transferred from the last government to us, but then they were saying there's 4.5 years of this parliament left. There's a long way to go.
That is certainly true. Well, let's pick that up with the panel. And Alex Phillips, if we start with you, you know Nigel Farage. How do you think he will feel things are going for Reform at the moment?
Well, they're going very well, aren't they? I mean, I remember when Aaron Banks donated £1 million to UKIP, and it's like, wow, this is massive news, this is huge. We've got that from Nick Candy now, saying he's donating a 7-figure sum to Reform. Elon Musk is rapidly retweeting all of this stuff. Exactly. The momentum is very much with Reform. Interesting, Nick talking there about the shifts going on when it comes to local footprints. Reform needs to build those local footprints now, ahead of May local elections, and use that, start to play for constituencies in the general election if they're going to win under first past the post. We know that in 98 seats, Reform came second place. The vast majority of those seats are Labour seats. Labour wins. If you look at those figures, that's the red wall falling. Where's it falling to? It's falling to Reform. These were the votes that essentially Nigel Farage put on a silver platter to Boris Johnson during Boris Johnson's snap election when he stood down candidates. The Conservative Party have squandered them. They've gone to Labour now. They're not going to stay with Labour, and I don't think they're going to go back to the Conservatives.
Okay, but it's one thing to be winning council by-elections, I'd say. We're 4.5 years away from a general election. The system hasn't traditionally rewarded smaller parties, so why would it be different this time?
Because actually, thank goodness for Reform, we're that far away from a general election, because winning under first past the post, as we know, is extremely difficult, and you need two things to take place. One is the ground war, so you need to establish branches, work at constituencies, you need to win at local elections, you need to get that foothold so you can then target seats effectively under the first past the post system. They know where to target, and they're now in the process of building from the bottom up, because before now there wasn't really a sort of substantial party structure underneath Reform. It was largely synthetic. The other thing that you need is money. Money builds your air war. Money means that you can have advertising. Money means you have billboards. It means you've got flyers. It means you've got staff and personnel. Now the money's coming. So actually, both things are happening at exactly the right time, early on in the election cycle. So if you look at where they are now, where are they going to be come the next general election? If I was the two legacy parties, I'd be very afraid.
Well, Ollie Dugmore, is this, do you think, about reform being strong or about other parties being weak? And is Alex right? They should be afraid.
Yeah, they should be terrified. No doubt. I was surprised to hear Nick reporting there that sort of Labour are quite calm and impressed and also slightly anxious. If I was them, I'd be paying a lot more attention to this.
I'm sure they are.
Playing. Yeah, I have no doubt. Yeah, I have no doubt what they're
Well,
saying.
I say that. Who knows?
Yeah, who does know? Starmer's in a sort of death spiral. He's now less popular than Donald Trump in the UK, which takes some doing. Kemi
Donald
Badenoch.
Trump is more popular than you'd think. I was looking at polls, 25% of people in the UK
Yes.
like Donald Trump.
I saw sort of net favourability. Trump is minus 24,
Right.
Starmer's minus 30. But well, yeah, I take your point. Badenoch, it's early days to make a call on, but I certainly haven't seen anything so far that would lead me to indicate that she's some sort of, once in a generation political figure who's going to turn this around for the Tories. And I think their brand is so toxic that you would have to be incredibly gifted to turn it around. I'm not sure that she is. Nigel Farage has a proven track record of upsetting the odds in British politics. If you'd have said that he was going to take us out of the European Union, campaign takes out of the European Union successfully, you'd have said he was crazy 30 years ago, and look what he did. The problem is the sort of tepid centrism of Starmer and the Labour government is not a challenge to the populism of Farage. If you don't tell a compelling political story, delivery is not enough. Look at the lessons of the US, and I think that's where I start.
And it looks like he's got some other people on his side. So I was just going to bring in a tweet, Nick, today, a tweet from Nigel Farage. He put up a tweet saying Reform UK is building a winning team to change British politics forever. And Elon Musk, we were talking about him earlier, asked the question, when is the first electoral opportunity? And Nigel Farage says the English County Council elections in May. Alex, do you welcome that this person who Elon Musk being reported potentially to be considering a $100 million donation to Reform? Do you want to see Elon Musk getting involved?
Happily. I
You
think
take
it's
his money.
brilliant. I love it. Why would they not? I think this is absolutely exceptional. What you've seen across the West is what is called populism, this tidal wave of people who are rejecting legacy politics, rejecting globalism, frankly, if you're going to put it crudely, and opting to go for smaller insurgent parties. Now, I have been with Nigel Farage since the early days. I was a Brexit Party MEP. Before that, I was his right-hand woman in UKIP. So, what surprises everybody else that suddenly Reform's so popular doesn't surprise me. Some of us saw this coming from a long way out and put our money where our mouth was a long time ago.
Ollie, Alex says, great, take the money from Elon Musk. What's wrong with it? Is there something wrong with that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm not sure that sort of taking a $100 million donation from the world's richest man could be described as rejecting globalism, but that's just me. I'm not sure that you should be able to buy influence in politics. I think it is slightly disturbing that if you're the world's richest man, you could potentially funnel $100 million into a political party.
That's how politics works.
Is it? Is that how politics works?
Ask Dale Vince, ask whoever you
Shall I
want.
just do a little word of caution? You probably remember in the 1980s the Liberal SDP Alliance were going to break the mould, and they didn't because they couldn't get first past the post. It is a monumental challenge to try and break that. I think I'm right in saying that since 1857 there have only been three parties that are either the government or the opposition: the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, or the Liberal Party. And in 1857 it was the Whig Party who became the Liberal Party. So it is very, very difficult to do it. But what the lesson may be from Donald Trump is it's not so much the policies or the positions, it's how you communicate. And what people in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party say about Nigel Farage is he does seem to communicate in a way that makes him sort of not necessarily sound like a conventional politician. And there are a tiny number of politicians in this country who've done that. You think of Boris Johnson, you think of Angela Rayner, and you think of the late Charles Kennedy. There's a tiny number of politicians who can do it, and that is the magic formula, potentially.
He's a polarising figure. Is there a ceiling that he can reach based on him being so polarising?
I don't think so. I mean, this is the narrative that the establishment wants to peddle, isn't it? But I don't think there is. I think that ceiling's going to be broken.
Holly?
I haven't seen him sort of break beyond, I think, UKIP's biggest result, European elections. You're looking at, 30% of the vote? I'm going off the top of my head here, so you might have to fact check me on that. I think Farage is a very polarising figure, and it cuts to what Nick was just saying then. Within a first-past-the-post system, can you actually win with that level of vote share? And I think you're going to see the British Constitution creaking, frankly. Most recent polling I saw had sort of Labour, Tories and Reform all in the kind of low 20%, and how our electoral system actually copes if we were to get a result like that. Well, one way of looking at it is interesting if you're a sort of neutral political observer. another way of looking at it is, possible, something comparable to sort of political state failure, and that would be quite concerning. So.
Okay, we have just got time to have a quick look at a few of the stories on the